Hello, everyone, and welcome to Virtual Flight Diaries Military Mondays. We have the Just Flight Avro Vulcan. We're going to be flying a mission today. We're part of a quick reaction alert crew stationed at Ramstein Air Force Base. The year is 1969. Of course, this is all fictional and tailored so that this stream could be done in a reasonable amount of time. So, we've been upgraded to Alert 1, and we're going to scramble. So, let's get inside. So the the airplane's electronics officer has already been on board, along with the other parts of the flight crew, and we just arrived, and we're going to fire this up quick start. So a well-trained crew could actually start this plane from alert to takeoff in 4 minutes. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do that. Because I don't have access to 5 crew members. It's just me. Alright, so with the ground power unit installed, we have the Palouse air cart connected. So we're going to start the APU. Master switch can come on. LP lock can come on. Going to trip that and reset it. And start the APU. It's not really an APU, it's an auxiliary, it's an AAPP. Alright, so that's all on. Let's go back to pilot seat. Next will be to turn on the radio. And then the fuel, which is in a very precarious position underneath the glare shield here. Alright, once the fuel's on, we fire up the engines. So this had a nitrogen canister in it that you could fire all 4 engines at once. That's what we're going to do because we're scrambling. All right, so you hear that engine start. The sounds on this are pretty good. They were recorded from the real Vulcan. Our armament for today is the Avro blue steel missile. It can be launched from 200 miles away from the target and carried a 1.1 megaton warhead. We're going to get into that in the flight. Alright, let's finish our power up. Now once the engines are started, we can bring them back to idle. Start the generators. Sync the alternators. Turn the alternator power on. Once that's on, we can shut down the APU. Back to the pilot seat. As you can see, all 4 engines are on. Very cramped quarters. So, pilot, first officer sat up here, and then just below would be 3 others. A aircraft electronics officer, a navigation officer, and a radar officer. Alright, so next is there. Turn the yaw dampener to 1. Then we extinguish all these lights. Once they're out, go over here. Turn on the pressurization. Nav lights to flash. Taxi lights. And we're ready to taxi. So I have some modern conveniences in here because this plane is very difficult to fly. And this just makes it a little easier. So we have a GPS unit, which didn't exist in 1969. I think everyone knows that. And we're going to be using the tablet's autopilot system. Just to make things a little easier. Alright, so we'll bring the center console up. So that moved out of the way for convenience sake to get into the cockpit. That's how cramped this thing was. Alright, all the fuel pumps are on and we can energize the autopilot. And we quickly look around. All the lights are extinguished. We're going to close the bomb bay doors and close the crew door. Although the bomb bay doors would not have been open with the blue steel attached. Alright, bomb bay doors extinguished. And we're ready to go. Parking brake released. Probably would help if I had removed the chocks. Okay. And that's what I get for not running checklists. Although the checklists are massive. I have no idea how these guys got this from receiving the alert to 4 minutes airborne. That is just impressive to me. This under British SOP regarding the quick reaction alert crews was to be airborne in 4 minutes. Now that was because after receiving notification that the Russians had launched their missiles, it was believed that they would have 4 minutes to get airborne, or they'll never get airborne because the missiles would have hit by then, so that they could have a counterstrike. See, nuclear warfare just boggles my mind. And I don't understand why it's an option these days. Everybody's going to launch everything, and there's going to be nothing left. So our target is Kaliningrad, Russia, a port city in the northwest. We're going to fly up to Szczecin. Szczecin, that sounded more Chinese than Polish. Szczecin, Poland. That's going to be our launch point, and then we're going to come back to Ramstein. So, in reality, Ramstein would not exist anymore. And I'm not quite sure where we would actually go after everything's been launched. But we're just at alert 1, which is a launch is imminent, so we're scrambling to get into position so that we can counterstrike. Hopefully things get reversed by the time we get there. Alright, as we approach the runway, we can arm the ejection seats. So this plane first entered service in 1956. This version was a 62 upgrade variant. Sporting the Olympus 202 series rapid start engines. And this plane was in the RAF service out of Scampton, Waddington, and see what was the Finningley, just to name a few air bases. All right, so takeoff checks. Landing lights, come on. Yep. That's on. Set our heading to runway. So this is an interesting compass. So this arrow here, this needle here, just real quick, this needle here is our direction, and the needle that I just moved is our heading bug. So this bezel didn't move. All right. This had a very distinct engine sound. Turn it up so you guys can hear it. It had a howl to it because of the way the intakes were made. Climbing just a little too fast. All right. Yeah. Very difficult to fly. It's delta wing configuration. Although it's not very difficult to land. I've landed it a couple times already, and Okay. So we're going to climb up to 40,000 feet to launch Blue Steel. Kind of using So I'm using the tablet for this because this control panel is a little buggy. And it's probably user error. But when we get up into the cruise here, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Vulcan. We're going to talk about the Vulcan, and then we're going to talk about Blue Steel while we await for our final rules of engagement for launching her. Although it's not looking good, guys. Right, just get back on course here. So the Vulcan had a pressurized cabin, supplemented with oxygen for all the crews. The pilot and co-pilot had ejection seats. The 3 crew members below did not. They would have had to have opened up the crew hatch in the bottom of the plane and crawled out wearing parachutes. All right, we're back on course. So let's sync up the heading bug. So in this plane, bomb is, so this is the flight director controls. So bomb is heading hold, remote is GPS hold, then localizer, and then glide path. So if you're doing an ILS landing, which this does have a coupled autopilot for ILS, you would turn this to approach and this to glide path. Datum doesn't work. It's not modeled. This tells the system which compass to use, so it's going off of this one. And then height is to use the terrain following. So this thing, much like the Tornado, had terrain following on it for low-level bombing. But it was originally designed for a nuclear strike force. It did not have auto throttle, but this really does make it easier. It has a service ceiling of 55,000 feet and can cruise just below Mach. All right, we're all set up here. This is where the modern Learjets fly. Alright, so just got word that the Russians have launched so we're going to put down our shades in case there's a blast near us. So we don't get fried. Alright, we're at our cruise. Red actual, Hotel 533, on course, on target, 40 minutes. I don't know, it sounded good. So we're going to try to get up there as fast as we can to deliver our payload. So the Avro Vulcan, like I said, was first introduced to the British Royal Air Force in 1956. And it was said that the crew could scramble it in 4 minutes. It became Great Britain's most iconic bomber. So much so that, I mean, even as a kid, I've heard of this plane. It was a cool plane with the Delta. So there's a lot of things that came from this design. And so it was part of the V bombers, or the V Force as it was called, and it was given the nickname the Tin Triangle. And we can see why it was called the Tin Triangle. It was named after the Roman god of fire and destruction, Vulcan, and could carry. And this version could carry 21,000 pounds of a nuclear payload. Like I said, it was designed specifically for the nuclear response. And it served with the RAF from 1956 to 1984, when it got too expensive to maintain them and parts became scarce. Except in 2007, a Vulcan with the registration X-Ray Hotel 558 was purchased by a civilian, who then restored her and brought her to flight. So it took to the skies again in 2007 and stayed flying until 2015, which was her last flight. She did a 1,000-mile tour of Great Britain. Because, unfortunately, repair costs and lack of parts, it got to be too much to keep her flying. Plus, her age. Apparently, the engines continuously stressed out the airframe. So, this one had 4 Olympus 201 engines. Each of them had 17,000 pounds of thrust. And it was the only time it ever got put into a nuclear response alert was for backup for the Cuban Missile Crisis. Other than that, it was used during the Suez Crisis, and it got its renowned combat use during the engagement at the Falkland Islands. When Argentina invaded the Falklands, Operation Black Buck was instituted, and this plane, which was getting ready to retire at the time, was used to bomb Argentine forces and strategic points in the Falkland Islands, specifically the first one. So the interesting thing about Operation Black Buck is that none of the aircraft that were carrier based had enough firepower to stop to bomb a runway and stop the Argentine Air Force from launching their planes in countermeasure. So the Avro Vulcan did have that firepower, and unfortunately it wasn't carrier based. So it had to launch from the Ascension Islands, which was the nearest British held colony, and that was 6,000 kilometers away. This at best has about 2,000 mile range. So and at the time this would have become the longest bombing run in history. It took so originally in the first launch of this bombing run, 2 Avro Vulcans were launched along with 11 tankers, and the tankers would piggyback each other across the Atlantic Ocean to maintain the fuel supply for the 2 Vulcans. Shortly after takeoff, the one Vulcan, XM559, I think it was, ran into some problems and had to return back to base, so it left only 1 Vulcan to proceed with the mission. And tankers were also old. They were Vickers Valiants in tanker form, which was the short predecessor to... I shouldn't say the predecessor. It was the Vickers Valiant was the first nuclear bomber. They beat it. Vickers beat the whole race to design a plane that could carry nuclear weapons, and the first bomber was then converted into tankers, and that's what was used here. So this lone Vulcan XM607 continued on the mission, and it ran into some pretty steep. It almost didn't make it. For one, they ran into a thunderstorm. They couldn't refuel. The one Vickers Valiant tried to piggyback refuel, and the thunderstorm, broke its fueling probe. There was a time where 607, just before the bombing run, had made the decision to turn back, but then the captain said, "No, I'm going for it." And he made his bombing run, and he took him by surprise and actually got a direct hit on the runway at Stanley Air Base in the Falkland Islands, and stopped the Argentine Air Force in one fell swoop. It was also, he almost ran out of fuel, so after the bombing run they had to go try to find the Valiants, that the resupply Valiants that came across, and a lot of them ran into problems because they were just as old, and one tanker made to the rendezvous point, and just before his Vulcan ran out of fuel, I mean, it was like on fumes, they were going to have to ditch. They found the tanker, refueled, and made it back to the Ascension Islands. It's a pretty harrowing story. It was labeled a success, and a few more missions were then planned, and a couple more bombing runs with no losses to the Vulcans, except one had to land in Brazil due to running out of fuel because of the such, long range. All right, so let's see where we're at here. So yeah, that was Operation Black Buck. Let's do some cleanup here. Quick systems check. So variants that were produced from this design by Avro. So the Avro wanted to, in 1956, wanted to produce a airline version of this plane called the Avro Atlantic. And although the design never came to fruition, the design was picked up by British Aerospace in the 70s and became what we all know as Concorde. So this is the grandfather of the Concorde. So much so that the engines, the Olympus 301s, which were installed in the 70s to the Vulcans, were then modified with afterburners, tested, and added to Concorde. So its engine design, the Vulcan's engine design, became the design for Concorde. I thought that was pretty cool. So blue steel is our armament. So blue steel, the Avro blue steel, was designed specifically for this plane. And it was a nuclear missile that had an inertia guidance system in it that could hit within 100 meters of its assigned target, which was really accurate for the 60s. It was in use from 1963 to 1970. Let's take a better look at it. So this thing would then drop, fall away, and then the rockets would engage in and it would fly at Mach 3 to its target, 200 miles. So usually launched at 150 miles, we're talking in 15 minutes it's gonna hit its target. It carried the Red Snow warhead, which was 1.1 megaton thermonuclear device. And that was a lot, since most of the nuclear devices of the time were in the 400 kiloton to 500 kiloton range. So this was like double. And 1.1 megaton, just to put it in reference, is 80 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Since that's the only, we usually compare that since that was the only one, well, and Nagasaki, but they were the only two ever used for damage assessment. So 80 times more powerful than Hiroshima is pretty devastating. So we'd be flying over the Netherlands right now, just skirting East Berlin, or East Germany at the time. Just checking on some things. All right. Our radio navigator has just alerted us that we are clear for launch. Missiles have destroyed most of Europe. London is gone. And the United States has launched their Alert 1 utilizing the B-52s and the B-58 Hustler. So they're on their way. So we're to deliver our payload to target. So this is our turn point. We're going to line up for our target launch. And launch our missiles. So we're gonna set up and prepare. Missiles armed. Launch button. Unguard it. Eight minutes to target. Just a target acquisition. Settle. need some music. I wonder. This is foreboding. All right, we're about 5 minutes to target. Cruise music. Some foreboding music as we're about to launch a nuclear weapon. world is already being destroyed. This is the realities of nuclear war. Some pretty scary stuff. Some nav adjustments here. Gonna be drifting off course probably because of the wind. The thing with this plane is it doesn't really, it does some weird stuff during, if you have it on GPS hold. Three minutes to target acquisition. So I don't know what you guys' views on war is. I have no real, I'm not an anti-war protester or something like that. I don't think war is great. But the thought of nuclear war is just crazy. The movie War Games had it right. No one wins. It's a tic-tac-toe match. And that's the extent of anything political on that. Try to avoid that on this channel. Everybody can have their own opinions. That's a great thing. All right, so we're going to start making our turn in. Line up for the target. 150 miles that way. It's Kaliningrad. Final checks. Bomb is armed. Launch ready. Once we pass this point, .30 seconds to launch. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Launch. Okay. It's hard to get the view. There we go. Do the emergency jettison. So then right there where it disappeared, it would have fired its rockets and off it would have went. All right. Well, we just launched our nuclear weapon, so we're going to have to get out of here. ETA. So we have about 15 minutes until it detonates. So there was a little bit of time. And we'll head back to Ramstein. All right, so in a moment I'm going to pull up so I have found a little web page that'll actually show us what we actually did to Kaliningrad. Let me get back on course here. Alright, so what did we do to Kaliningrad? We obliterated it. So our blue steel bomb has detonated in Kaliningrad. We've killed 226,110 people, and we've injured another 111,050 people. So the center is the fireball radius. So 6 square kilometers have been vaporized. So this is the maximum size of the nuclear fireball. Relevance to damage on the ground depends on the height of the detonation, but if it touches the ground, the amount of radioactive fallout is significantly increased. Anything inside the fireball is effectively vaporized. So Center City is dust. So this is the first radiation ring, 5,000 rems. 5,000 rems of ionizing radiation dose, fatal and incapacitating within 5 minutes, with recovery period, and then death occurs 4 to 6 days after. The heavy blast damage ring. Heavily built concrete buildings and severely damaged or demolished fatalities in this area are 100%. So the blast just obliterates people. This is the 1,000 rem ring. 1,000 rems of ionizing radiation, fatal, incapacitating in 5 minutes with recovery period, and then death within 4 to 6 days. And then the 500 rem ring, likely fatal in about a month. 15% of the survivors will eventually die of cancer due to results of exposure. Moderate blast damage. So 70 square kilometers have received a pressure of 5 psi overpressure. Residential buildings will collapse. Injuries are universally fatal and widespread. Chances of fire starting in the commercial and residential areas are high. Buildings are so damaged that they are at high risk of spreading fire, often used as a benchmark for moderate damage. This is the thermal radius. So anybody in this ring, out here because it's getting big, so anybody in this ring is going to receive 3rd degree burns, and that's 448 square kilometers. 3rd degree burns extend throughout this layer, throughout the layers of the skin, and often painless because it destroys all the nerves. It can cause severe scarring and disablement, requiring amputation. 50% probability of 3rd degree burns at this yield is 9.78 calories per calculated per centimeters cubed. I don't know what that formula would be. This is the light blast damage ring. Blowing out windows. This could cause injuries to the surrounding population that comes within the windows, seeing the flash of the nuclear explosion, which travels faster than the pressure wave. Or often, so you're blind and then hit with whatever debris is flying around you. So everybody in this ring, 672 square kilometers from the blast source, has received 2nd degree burns, which are extremely painful. And this ring, we'll call this the sunburn ring. because everybody in this ring, 1,230 square kilometers, have received first-degree burns. So this is our destruction. And we were one bomb. So we would have been probably a group of 3 or 4, and we would have hit other cities along here, overlapping. That's pretty devastating. So this area right here is gone. Modern day nuclear weapons have multiple warheads on just one missile. So let's take a look at some different other warheads real quick. This is the Minuteman III. Detonate the Minuteman III. There's an aerial burst. The aerial burst one is not, I mean, it's still devastating, but it offers a less of a fireball damage, more radiation damage. So we're beating up Kaliningrad. Let's look at let's do Philadelphia. Nearest city to me. And this is the largest bomb in the current U.S. arsenal. So, actually, let's look at some Russian stuff, because that would be what's hitting us. I don't know if they have. This is China's current one. Alright, let's look at this one. Russia's probably got the same. This is also area burst. So it bursts above the ground, doesn't impact. 990,000 fatalities and 1.5 million injured. Third-degree burn ring goes out to Norristown. That's the 100% probability. The 50% probability ring goes all the way almost to We're looking at Lansdale, Skipback, Phoenixville. Light damage, so windows and everything else will blow out. Flash blindness all the way out to Lansdale, Skipback, Phoenixville. And the first degree burn ring goes all the way out, so the suntan ring goes all the way out to Limerick. Percy, Levittown. Would not want to be caught there. About the largest bomb ever designed. That was the one designed. This was the one tested. So they actually detonated this. Wow. So the damage ring goes all the way out to Hamburg, Reading, past Allentown. Almost to New York City from Philadelphia. Dover, Atlantic City. So this one was just tested. It was never really implemented. That's crazy. So we do have a bomber force in the Strategic Air Command for the United States, but we're mostly the ICBM pretty much all over the world that utilizes a nuclear arsenal in modern times as an ICBM. So an ICBM launch from Soviet Union would be 26 minutes to the United States. And the same for us. 26 minutes and the world will go to dust. I'm sure there will be some survivors. But then we'll have a Mad Max situation after that. Alright guys, so what are we going to talk about for 30 some minutes? Well, we've done our duty, so let's go back to flight sim mode, where Ramstein Air Base exists and the world is still functioning. Good job scanning that horizon. So the trick with landing the Vulcan is just to keep your speed up. Because of the delta wing, the faster this thing goes, the more stable it is. So it's a dance between uh, being too fast for landing and being too slow to maintain lift. So this is a fancy card that calculates us based on weight. So we're going to be 166 in the pattern. We're going to approach at 146. I'm going to be a little faster than that. Just I found it a little more stable. And then we'll drop down to 136 for touchdown. Deploy the spoilers. And then the ballistic parachute also deployed. We get a little closer, start our descent into Ramstein. So this had a range of roughly 2,200 miles before it needed to be refueled. So it could almost reach the United States. It needed a refueling point. Vulcans in the 70s, the 60s and 70s came to the U.S. and trained with the U.S. for strategic air command and nuclear weapons ops. They did practice scrambles. They acted like, the Russians coming in, did mock bomb runs on New York City, and the U.S. then would defend. They showed up at some air shows. It's a little before my time. I've actually never seen a Vulcan in person, just pictures in a book. Actually, one of the books I had as a kid had an Avro Vulcan in it. I read a lot of aviation books in my day. I had a book that had airplanes of the world, and it did a whole breakdown and you know cutaway diagrams and stuff like that. And I remember the Avro Vulcan being one of them. Just do some cruise stuff. Unfortunately, tonight, chat's not very engaging. And it's no fault of people. Just a chill night. Cloud cover, not much scenery. This altitude, you can see the curvature of the Earth. Take that, flat earthers. Has a pretty cool 3D effect. Been doing my test flights for this stream, in Germany for the past couple of days. Guys have been getting hammered with thunderstorms. At least that's what Active Sky and X was telling me. We're on course with an estimated time of 13 minutes back to Ramstein. Starting our descent soon. A little cockpit. So for our pattern entry, we're going to cross over the field and then turn downwind, come around for final. We're landing runway 27 at Ramstein. Start our descent. Not very intuitive. A click. Now we're actually approaching the speed of sound. You have a keybind for altitude hold. We'll get there eventually. There's no way to do this in thousands, it's only hundreds. There we go. Wait, set the nav, so that's comms. We gotta turn off that discard, that steam notifier. You can't blow the canopy on this one. Not modeled. Oh, so that's how you do it. Okay. See what the ILS for Ramstein is anyway. 1075. I wonder. Ever done an ILS approach in this plane? I've always hand flown it in. That's how you do it. Start slowing down here. I wonder if it'll capture. Ah, it's going to hand fly it. It's very wallowy. It was too far above the glide slope for that. Welcome back to Ramstein Air Force Base. So a lot of rudder, a lot of trim. It's not very. It actually helps that it kind of wallows because you can set it up and it kind of stays where you put it, so to speak. Let's check out that replay. So it's very easy to hand fly on the approach. Once you give yourself a wide berth. Nice smooth landing. That's the best landing I've done so far. So that's it. That's the Avro Vulcan, guys. It's a lot of complexity, uh, large manual. There's a lot of history. If you like flying around in military planes, this is one to get. Just Flight did a really good job on it. It's a real challenge. All right, guys. Well, that's another Military Mondays in the books. It's very special dedication to Memorial Day, and God bless all the servicemen and women who gave their all for this country around the world. God bless you. All right. Till the next one. Clear skies and smooth landings. Hey, if you like my stuff, like and subscribe. Uh, hit that like button. Really would appreciate it. And on to the next one. See ya.